Hello. It's such a delight to be here with you today. Bill and I are both here. Oddly enough, we're from West Michigan. We get to go all over the world and give talks, but rarely we get to talk here, so thank you for the invitation. I feel like what we can deliver on, what we've already delivered on here at TEDxMacatawa is the proof of what everybody knows, which is that West Michigan is the epicenter of progressive culture. Have we not seen ample proof of this today? As evidence, I would like to cite the fact that you can walk around calling yourself a beer evangelist here, and that's okay. That you can talk about things like complexity, and that's okay. And Bill and I are further evidence of this. We walk around calling ourselves information architects, and somehow that's okay. Information architects, you may not have heard of us before, but you can think of us like you may think of architects in the built environment. Just like this beautiful theater, the beautiful facility that we had lunch in, when people want to decide together to spend a lot of money to do something that goes beyond just function, we could have met in a barn, we could have had lunch in a shed, but we didn't. Architects worked with some groups of people somewhere to decide together to do something that goes beyond function. And with information, we feel like we ought to be doing the same thing. How many of you here do things at your work that end up on websites? I can barely see. Yes, many of us. The reason that most of these websites are terrible, and I apologize if yours is showing, is just like with architecture, if you just jump in and start making stuff, that isn't always the best way to proceed. And what we believe is that websites, digital information systems, the reason so many of them have been so bad for so long is because they've not been architected. They've been designed and they've been built, but they haven't been architected. And one of the things that architects give us are places that are really good for people, like this one. And to think about the architecture of information as making places that ought to be good for people. So we want to learn from the people who make good places. Those are architects. Some of you may have been to this wonderful place. It's called Marigold Lodge. It's on the north shore of Lake Macatawa. Herman Miller operates this building. It's more than 100 years old. And they host their guests at this building. And going beyond function, there's a brand new hotel right around the block from here that their guests could be accommodated in quite nicely. But there's something about Marigold Lodge, there's something true about what people are like, that building and those grounds, there's a wonderful place to sit there. It's a place that's good for people. So that's what we want to learn about, learning about what's true about people. And that's really hard. It's far easier to just solve the problem. The inventor of the TED conference, Richard Saul Wurman, was an architect, and what he knows is something that is counterintuitive, that it's actually easy to jump in and solve the problem. What's hard is asking what's true. So that's what we're interested in as information architects. How is it possible that this church in Ronchamp in France, built in 1954, there's something true about what people are like that caused this building, when it opened, to be considered one of the finest works of architecture in the Western world. Today, if you go to Ronchamp in France, it's still considered to be one of the finest examples of architecture in the Western world. And what's amazing to me is that what's true about how people are, what was true in 1954 when Le Corbusier made this building, that isn't the same truth today that draws visitors by the thousands. It's a different truth, but it's still true that this is a good place for people. So I get to teach information architecture at the University of Michigan, and I drive back and forth between my home in Hudsonville and Ann Arbor quite a lot. And if you were to ride along with me from here to Ann Arbor, I could show you some examples of architecture right here in Michigan that we can learn from. Examples of people trying to decide together to do something more than just check off boxes on a list of functional requirements. If you were to travel just 10 miles east of here to the city that I'm from and that I still live in, Hudsonville, there's this magnificent building that was built by Lamar Construction Company. It's a 30,000 square foot messy machine shop on the bottom with a giant, beautiful office building horizontally arrayed, jutting out over top of it. These people, what they thought they could do is have the best of both worlds. I've never seen the combination of a messy, giant machine shop and a beautiful office building. And this was the most radically cantilevered, occupied dwelling building in North America, but it's not occupied anymore. They chained up the doors last year. So sometimes when we try to make buildings reflect something that's true, what was true for these folks, that they wanted to have the best of both worlds, didn't survive the economy. A commercial real estate and construction company just couldn't operate in a building like this. So this isn't a good example of architecture, so let's keep going. 25 miles further east to the Steelcase Pyramid, the former Steelcase Pyramid. Like the building that Seth showed you, this was a building that was created for collaboration on purpose. The idea was that they could bring all of the people, they would be a vertically integrated company, bring all of the people together because of that research that shows that when people are co-located that they can be more innovative. Steelcase had 2,000 people working in this building, and they built it to survive anything imaginable. We had a tour of this the other day, and it's triple redundant. 3 power systems, 3 telephone systems. It's an amazing building, and it was built to last hundreds of years. The published budget for this building was $111 million. We talked with some of the people who are operating it today, and they said, no, that's not true. There wasn't a budget. This was built, again, to go beyond function. Let's do something really remarkable. Let's write our truth large in a building that will last. And $111 million in 1989 turns into, they sold it for $7.5 million a couple of weeks ago. So this is not easy, not by any stretch. So the last stop that you could make with me, if you rode in the car with me all the way to Ann Arbor, I could take you to the Big House, to Michigan Stadium. It's the largest stadium in North America for sports, for college sports at least, 3rd largest in the world. And this was the site of an architectural controversy not too long ago. What happened was they needed to add seats to the stadium to let more and more of these rabid Michigan football fans into the building to see the contest. And at the time, the university president worked with some of the most famous architects in the world, Venturi and Scott Brown. And what these architects like to do is they like to make buildings be expressive. So not only going beyond function, but making them be festive and expressive. And their idea for how to add seats to the stadium was to put a big yellow halo around the top and put the words to the Michigan fight song on it. Hail to the conquering heroes. Hail to the victors valiant. And many in the university community thought this was great. How ironic that we're all well-educated and yet we're watching barbarism. Billions of dollars worth of expense poured into this barbaric celebration. And beautiful irony. Academics, we love that kind of stuff. Turns out the townspeople didn't like it very much. What these architects did, and they had to spend $100 million to take it, or $100,000 rather, to take it down. What these architects did was not good for everybody. And so we're curious, we ask ourselves, why did this happen? What's going on here?
So Dan started this talk talking about this concept of deciding together. And this is really kind of the key to what we think is at the problem to a building like this. You know, deciding together is our proposition for what needs to happen before collaboration. It's a thing that serves as the framework for all of that work. Deciding together is the act of truth-seeking before problem-solving to achieve what we refer to as durable agreement, right? I'm sure lots of us in this room are responsible for building things, right? We're responsible for building products and businesses, software, relationships, things that need to last a long time. And this notion of not jumping into problem solving right away, but taking a look and framing out the situation, framing out the reality of what exists today is that first step that needs to occur. Now, the problem with all of this, and this is what happened with Venturi Scott Brown. They were partnered with the presidents of the university. They were partnered with the athletic director, and they didn't take kind of the next step in looking at their spheres of influence for the community as to where this piece of architecture was going to go. Was this solution going to be good for the place that it was in? There's a great quote by Charles Eames, "Never delegate understanding." And this is one of the things that was the problem with this Halo solution, was that it wasn't framed properly up front. They delegated their understanding to the president of the college and to the attitudes of the college, and they didn't pay any attention to the people who lived in the community with which this thing would be, right? This place where every weekend people with, blue painted bellies would show up. And this is a problem because we start with problem solving so often, right? We're really great at problem solving. All of our businesses are really structured around solving problems, right? We're really good at it. This is a graph that I pulled from Google Ngrams, which is essentially Google consuming books over the course of the last 200 years worth of books that have been published. And you can look up keywords, right? And this is problem. So you see how often we start to talk about problem. This probably happened around late 1800s, early 1900s when the concept of management theory popped up. And we started talking about how do we control our environments and our relationships better? How do we solve things much more efficiently, much more quickly? I think what's really fascinating, though, is that if you take a look at this in comparison to this, right, about that same time, we stopped concerning ourselves with what the truth was. And I don't know if that's because we found the truth too complex or too messy or too full of contradictions, but we left it out of the equation. And I think this is one of the challenges, right? Before we go into these wicked problems of taking a breath, of taking a step back, of having a conversation amongst the people that are involved, as well as the broader community. And it's hard because we're really good at problem solving, right? We see the problem, it's right there. We know we can fix it if we just take a step. But there's this great quote by Edward Albee, the famous playwright of the play Zoo Story. Sometimes it's necessary to go a long distance out of the way in order to come back a short distance correctly. And we believe when you're working towards durable agreement, when you're working towards something that requires a large investment and requires a sense of sustainability, that you need to start with truth-seeking first. And there are actually some fairly simple ways to go about doing that.
That's right. And in order to travel that distance to get around problem solving to where the truth is, we need maps. And you may have heard this famous quote by Korzybski that the map is not the territory, but I think the rest of the quote is more interesting and something we can learn from, which is that good maps are like the territory. And what are people like? People are complex and contradictory and a total mess. So to have a tool that any of us can use, this is a tool that you can use right now. If you can make a line, you can use this tool to take things that are typically thought of as either-or problems. So in business, we can either service the clients that we have, or we can acquire new ones. Which one do you want, either or? This tool allows you to say yet. We need to service our existing customers, yet we will also service and acquire new customers. This kind of a tool lets a group of deciders see together what they believe, what they think, where the truth might be. And one of the biggest traps to this kind of deciding together is the belief that consensus is the way forward. If we take the average of what everybody wants and then put the star on the line where the average says that might be true, and that's not true. What's also true about people, not only are we complex and contradictory, we are differently powerful in deciding. And if these two people decide differently than these other folks, that average of intent isn't true. So what we ought to be doing is embracing diversity. bringing in more deciders, not just the athletic department and the president, everybody who's affected by this thing to decide together.
And it's that act of bringing in more people, in the act of deciding that really draws and develops innovation, right? It's that sense of bringing in the heterogeneous group, right? All of those different perspectives that start to do that, that start to bring in perspective and start to surface truths that we weren't aware of before. Now, we started this conversation talking about digital places, and we think this level of deciding really needs to take place. There needs to be a thought about the sustainability of digital places. How do we continue to make good investments here? Because they're real places. This photo was actually taken by the person by a friend of the person who's looking at their cell phone right there. That's the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, right? And you might laugh at it and say, oh, they're in this really beautiful place, and why are they paying attention to their cell phone, right? But it shows the importance that these are places that we're creating. They should be beautiful, meaningful places. We spend an average of 150 times a day looking at these devices. We spend over 40 hours a month in these places. We need to architect them well. We need to understand the truth that underlies all of our human intention, because we're going to be spending a lot of time there.
So, going beyond function, that's hard. Durable truth is hard. Averages aren't durable. Consensus is not usually a good way to get to durable agreement. We're all complex and contradictory, and heterogeneity helps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.